Look at this beast. This is a Carlsbro 100 watt power amp, or 100 watt slave power amp as they were called in those days. That's what most people refer to them as slaves, and you can see various amps from this era with it'll say slave out and so on. So basically this is just a 100 watt power amp. Obviously it's tubed, 4L34s, just got a volume control, and you would use these. Nowadays people use power amps, they put preamps through them. But in those days you had a slave out from your amplifier, you plugged it into the input, either of the inputs that we've got there. You'd have another 4x12 cab on this or whatever, and it'd just basically double your power. You'd have a 100 watt amp and a 100 watt slave. Nowadays no one, well, probably some bands still do, but I certainly wouldn't be using that sort of power. And the other thing about this is it weighs more than I do. This is a beast. Now I bought this probably 5 years ago, maybe something like that, probably 5 years ago. And the guy, when I went to collect this, the guy had got some CD player through there, something like that, I can't remember, and this thing was loud, seriously loud. But it's been stood for about 5 years. So I'm just going to run it up on the Variac because it never had any new caps in it or anything. I just bought this, and then I kind of just I saw it cheap, I bought it, and then I just put it away, never used it. So there's a reason why I'm going to power this up and make sure it runs okay, but we'll get onto that a bit later, or maybe even in another video. But for the time being, we're just going to have a look at this and just make sure it works okay. So I'm just going to spin it around now so we can look at the back. I've paid the crane operator, we've managed to turn it round. So let's just go in. If we go down and we'll just get a bit more light on there so we can see. So we can see there we've got the main selection there going on, and that incidentally seems to be on the wrong one, so we'll put it on 250 volts. Bulging socket there. These obviously not very good, and one of the problems these have is this earth pin is actually it's got like a bolting set out there, and they come loose and that drops out. So if you're ever going to use these bulging sockets, I don't recommend you use them, but some people want to keep their equipment all original. So and I'm just getting a bit closer, so if you're ever going to use these bulging sockets, always keep an eye on this earth pin and make sure that it's not loose. I have seen those where they've fallen out. And so we've got a couple of fuse holders there, and you can see the covering on the back here with the heat is just beginning to peel off a bit there. And you can see there we've got the Carlsbro sound equipment, manufactured in England. These amplifiers were manufactured in Kirkby and Ashfield, which is where I actually grew up. And I lived in Kirkby and Ashfield from being 8 years old up until I was not sure really, probably about 20, 21, I can't remember now. But yeah, serial number there, and we've just got 4 speaker outputs, just in case you wanted to put 4x12 cabs on it. It does paint a picture, my word, what our lad bands used to play in those days. So we've got 100 volt line on there, 15 ohms, 7.5 and 3.5. So yes, a beast. Let's have this back off and have a look. Right, we're having a look inside. I've just checked these tubes, and you can see we've got a code on there. I've actually written that down, B5C3, and then the code below it is XF3, although they're printed upside down. All these tubes have that same code on, these EL34s. So if we look on the top of that transformer, you can see that says Partridge, so the Partridge transformers and the output transformer, so all original on the transformers. We've got the choke there, and look at the capacitors under there. Look at those beasts. They are beasts. We'll have a bit more in-depth look at those when we actually take it out of the case. The preamp tubes, or preamp tube, I'm not sure how many's in it. There might be two in there. There'll be a phase inverter and probably one other there behind that shield that you can see there. Right out its case. Boy, that thing is heavy. It's a beast, an absolute beast. But let's move that cable around there. So there we are. So you can see two preamp tubes as I thought they would be. One will be a long tail pair phase inverter, ECC 83, some kind of nondescript thing. Same there, not sure what they are. They could be anything. And you can see the capacitors now. If we look in there, those are beasts, and they are 60 microfarads and 100 microfarad in a can, so 60s and 100s. You can see the Partridge transformers there. See those now in much more detail. Let's turn it over and have a look at the gubbings. Right, you can see that the plate here is only being held on by the sockets and the switches and the pot and things, and of course there's nothing up here, so this is floating in the breeze. So obviously having most of the capacitors, because some of these Carlsbros have all the capacitors on the board, but this one of course has got those big ones there. Just looking at how they've been wired up. Look at this cable, very thin and weedy cable. That's quite surprising. Very just get the light on there, you see that's really thin stuff. So we've got a 20 plus 20 on here, which just having a quick skirt through, that to me looks like it's on the bias. Looking at that, where that's running, that's running down to the bias preset pot, and that is running, oh, I don't know, can't see, but I've got a feeling that that's what that's. Or at least one half of that's running the bias. Smoothing the bias, should I say, to be correct. Smoothing the bias. And then we've got 22 microfarad at 450 up here. And we've got 150 volts at 47 microfarad. Screen resistors all look in good order. Look at that capacitor there. That is connected to pin 3. So that's a cathode bypass capacitor, and you can see he's very leaky. PC board extravaganza, albeit a very old PC board extravaganza. Some extremely weedy grid stoppers there. You can see they're probably about 1/4 of a watt or something. Dreadful things, but never mind, they are only taking signal. Ground bus, let's check that before we start powering up, make sure we've got a good ground. There's another ground bus over there. Diodes, you can see for the power. Someone's had this board out before, and they've been a bit rickety with the soldering iron, or maybe this cable just melts at this cable covering just melts at nothing, but they've they're secure enough. Yeah, we've got some Mullard mustard capacitors in here as well. It's always good to see. So I suppose we could fire this up really. The other cap's look in good order. A little bit, I think that one's just starting to show a bit of signs of puncturing. It's got a bit of a black head on it. So I think the best thing to do, I've got a bulging lead, so I think the best thing to do is to power this beast up. We'll bring it up on the variac. I mean, I know this thing runs, but I'll bring it up on the variac just so we're not shocking those caps. Those have been stood for about 5 years, and then we'll see where we are with it. Right, we've got a meter rigged up, and we've got the speaker in, we've got the switches on, and we've got the volume at number 10, because we're not expecting to get a massive amount of output out of this because it has no preamp stage, or very little. But we'll give it a go. So let's just pop a bit of volts into there. Nothing happening. Wonder why that is. Nothing. Not a bean. Not a bean. I'll have to investigate why then. Maybe well, the first thing is to see if the fuse has blown in this cable. It may be. Fuse is okay. Let's put 30 volts, about 20 volts AC. And we will just check to see if there's anything coming in. There is indeed. So we've got volts to there. Now I changed this over to 240 volts. So I'm beginning to wonder if the 240 volt tap is open. So let's just test up to the switch. And no, it's not open because I've got voltage to the switch, so that's okay. Just suddenly thought about that it might be. Well, I've got voltage there. Right, let's see if we've got any voltage to the caps again. And we have now. Oh, well, I don't know what that was about. Don't know what that was about. Well, maybe the fuse was just not connecting properly. I don't know. Or maybe the meter wasn't. Right. And off we go then. So don't know what that was, but anyway, we're cooking. You can see the voltage going up, and we've got 50 volts on the variac, and we've got 60 volts on there. No problems. We'll go to 125 volts. We'll just the LED's lit now. Plug something into one of those inputs. Oh, there we go. There we go, look. Even the volume pot's not crackly. Let's take it up a bit more. £150 volts on the variac. And that's running as sweet as you like. let's give it some more juice, madam. 177 volts. And you can see this thing's turned flat out and it's not very loud, and again that is because it simply doesn't have much of a preamp stage. It's also got a defunct cathode bypass capacitor on that stage, which also won't be helping things if that's had its chips, and it looks like it has. I think that'll be 68 microfarad. Seems to be a bit of a standard Carlsbro capacitor that does on the bypass cap, 68 microfarad. They must have bought a boatload of them. Right, we're at 200 volts now. I've got a feeling there's a lot more HT than that, because I'm just going to switch off before I remove that. I'm going to wait for that voltage to drain as well. Probably can't see what I'm doing here, you probably can. So just clip that on. Yep, that's fine. I'm going to take that off now. So we'll switch on again. See that going up. Which we got on these? Only 171 there. 410, that's more like it, yes. So yeah, that's good. Let's just wind it up to full tilt. 240 volts. Quiet, very quiet. And that works fine. Although, as I say, it definitely needs some new capacitors. Strange, 100 plus 100 microfarad plus 60 microfarad wired in parallel. Seems a bit odd. So there we are, that's up and running. Let's just see what the final HT voltage is. Be very careful. 450. Right, I've switched this off, and it's been off for a good while now. Well, probably about 2-3 minutes. Look at the voltage left in the capacitors. So again, this is just another warning to people. If you're going to be messing around inside these amps, make sure these caps are discharged. Those, you know, that's the meter's now discharging that voltage could sit in those capacitors for maybe 24 hours. Start playing around in there. Remember, there were 450 volts on there when we tested it. Still 300 volts and drop. It is beginning to drop. Still 300 volts and dropping. So be very careful when you're delving into these amps. And you see that cap's only got 20 volts on it, look. So everybody thinks, well, there's not much voltage in there. Try this cap in the corner. Still got nearly 300 volts on it. So be very careful when you amps this size. That would really bite. Always check. Never assume that the caps have discharged. That one's only got 19 in. That one's got 95 in it. And it's strange normally, because in most amps, once you sort of check the caps, they've all got down to 20 volts, but this one hasn't. 282, and that one's got 93 in it. So yeah, there you are, a little bit of a lesson there. I might just give it a quick bias check just to see before I use it for this project, just to make sure it's running correctly. Right, so I've just done the bias on there, and they've got the output transformer. 0.1 out, that's a perfect match, that transformer. Unbelievable. You don't see that very often. So we've got 1.6 volts drop on this side, and we finished up with 15.8 watts. We've got 1.4 drop on this side, on the right side, 13.9 watts. So they're mismatched. We've got nearly 2 watts difference, and the bias is a little low as well. So I might just tweak that up. Right, I've tweaked the bias a little bit out. There's a bit of a mismatch on the tubes, but it'll manage. I've discharged the caps again because I'm going to put this back in the case, and I use this rather large resistor for discharging the caps, and I also put some electrical gloves on when I do it, just to be safe so I don't get a nip. Right, it's all back together. So, a little chat. What are we going to do with this amp? What do you think we should do with it? I think it's worthy of being converted into something, but what? It would be a shame to break it up, although it's worth a lot more in parts than it is as it is. And even if, you know, we built a really spot on design into this, it's never going to be worth a lot of money. It's just going to be a fun project. So we've got various options. We could turn this into a high watt. We could turn it into a Marshall, Plexi, JCM 800. We could even make it use the circuit from an orange amp. There's so many options with it. We could do something high gain, Soldano, something like that. But what I'm going to do, and I do this quite often when we have got these type of amplifiers that we're thinking of doing projects with, what would you lot do with it? Let me know in the comments what you would do with this amp. What would you like to see, or more so, what would you like to see me do with it? But I think this will make a good project. So that'll do it for this one, and I'd just like to say thank you to all the subscribers of the channel and all the people who watch the channel, and some of the great comments that I've had from people. It's been fantastic, the response I've had from people especially over the last 7 or 8 months. So thank you to everyone, and yeah, we'll keep pumping out the videos. So thanks for watching, and you all take care, and I'll see you all in another video. Bye bye for now.